I know you're planning something. Not really, it's the assignment. I just want to know what. Because you really got to get the research assignment right, we're going to have a research proposal for this one. Don't freak out. It's not a long-winded assignment. You can knock it out in a page and a half, really. But I want to get some idea of where you're going, and this is how I want you to do it. I went ahead and wrote up a proposal based on the anti-karaoke argument I was going to make for the ethics essay, so that we had something we could look at. Decent example. And here we got it. I'm going to go ahead and link this in today's folder in Blackboard as well. First, it's formatted as a standard MLA document, 1-inch margins all around, double spaced, indentation 1 inch, name, teacher name, class, date, title centered. I put headings so I can easily distinguish the 3 sections. We have the introduction, the thesis, and the research. Let's go over them. The introduction, some people will use it as a chance to do a rough draft for their paper introduction. That's fine if you want to do that. Professional writers tend to write their introductions near the end of the process. I mean, you can better say what you're going to argue when you finish writing the actual body of the paper than you can before you started. There's going to be some level of changes. All I really want from here is a good idea that you have a grasp on your subject and the scope of what you're going to be writing about. So in the text in here, I introduce the place I'm looking at, Howard's Club H in Bowling Green. I establish its history, whether from its time in the 50s and 60s hosting blues legends such as Willie Dixon, or from the 90s and early 20th century as a rock club with such touring bands as Marilyn Manson, Andrew W.K., and Superdrag. Marilyn Manson played there on a few occasions, as did Kid Rock, because they were both from the Detroit scene, and Bowling Green's not too far away. For performing local musicians, playing Howard's was an achievement. Now, however, the bar has undermined its historical roots and its ties to the local musicians by moving towards the enemy of live music everywhere, karaoke. And this starts to move from why this place was important to it was important specifically to this group as a result. And the change from live music to karaoke has a specific effect on these people. So I've established the place I'm talking about, why it's important, and who the change is affecting. The thesis statement: by pivoting away from live music and towards karaoke nights in their schedule, the owners of Howard's Club H have ethically undermined their obligations to area musicians by eschewing local creators in favor of crass commerce. I have a thing for big words, but state yours as plain as you need. I'm not expecting this to be a final thesis statement. I want to know that you have a starting point in terms of argument. I will not compare and contrast this to whatever comes out at the end. This is just where your argument is at this point in time. I want to see that there is one. Then for research, the instructions say that you need to have at least 4 sources. I went ahead and threw in a few more. These were all from a quick search of the university library catalog for one book, and everything else is from Academic Search Complete. The first source, Evangelos Christakis, I guess, The Visible Evidence of DIY Ethics, Music, Publicity, and Technologies of Invisibility in Glasgow. It's an article specifically about the Glasgow music scene, but it does talk about DIY, which is what area musicians are. They're DIY artists. They're not connected to any large organization. And it talks about how ethics works within the DIY community. Not about the same subject of analysis as my thesis, but there are enough similarities to where it can be valuable. Rob Drew, Karaoke Nights, an Ethnographic Rhapsody. An ethnography of karaoke, that is a study of the people who do karaoke, is going to give insight into why karaoke is valued in some circles, particularly within the audience, but I'm sure it's going to touch on why the businesses do karaoke to begin with. Next one is owners of music company find that a lot of young musicians lack the work ethic needed to make it in the business. Some artists need to change their tune. This is from the Houston Chronicle. Yeah, I know the Houston Chronicle is not an academic source, but the point of this article is the owners, people who would be closer to management, talking about those darn kids aren't doing what they need to survive. It's probably going to be something I'd want to argue against. But it also does talk about young musicians. Sebastian Nettlecutt, Lifestyle and Psychosocial Factors in Musicians from the Lejeune Medical. I don't know how much I'm going to delve into the personal effect on the musicians themselves, but it seems like a decent thing to at least read about. Stephanie Pitts, Not Playing Anymore, Qualitative Investigation of Why Amateur Musicians Cease or Continue Membership of Performing Ensembles from the International Journal of Community Music. Having another peer-reviewed source is always good. And this one is going to hit why musicians would stop doing their stuff. Obviously, lack of venues would be probably one of the reasons. I'm curious as to see how much that's true with a wider swath of musicians. Bert Weidsters, I guess, Online Music Consumption in Today's Technological Context, Putting the Influence of Ethics in Perspective, from the Journal of Business Ethics. It's nice to have another source about ethics here, because you'd be shocked at how many students write a paper on ethics and don't mention ethics. I thought it would be just a kind of smart idea. You've got to have sources not only about your subject of analysis, which this does need some, it also does need more sources from the bar owner's perspective. But you also have to have sources on the critical approach you're going to employ. In this case, it would be an ethical paper, which you could do for Essay 4 as well. You've already done it for Essay 3, but I don't have a problem with you doing that again if that's what you want to do. But you need some kind of source that covers your subject of analysis, some kind of source that covers the key issues you're having, some kind of source that covers the critical approach you're talking about. You need stuff from respected venues. There are 4 things from peer-reviewed academic journals. There's a newspaper article, there's a book, so there is a variety of sources. This is the kind of thing to which you should strive in your own proposals. Not saying that you have to do my weird ideas or my weird use of language, but try to cover these bases. Ultimately, the real value of this assignment is it gives me a chance to provide you feedback before you get way too deep into this. So use the feedback I give you to adjust your approach to your material, to think of new sources, to think of new ways to get your intellectual claws into your material. Sorry. And I hope my comments help. See you next video.